What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome to episode 4 of How to Dominate. For those of you that are new to the series, in each episode I share with you guys how I find consistent success while playing a particular game mode solo. The tips and tactics that I share are designed to help you win while also ending up on top of every lobby that you play in. In this episode, I'm going to show you guys how to dominate Domination. Domination is my most played game mode in Black Ops 2, and there is a ton of stuff I could talk about, but I'm going to sort of condense it down to the things that you really need to know that separate the good players from the players that dominate. So let's start it off with opening routes. I'm obviously not going to go over every opening route on every map because that would just take forever, but I will give you a general indication of how I like to approach it. I always like to avoid attacking the B flag head on if the map allows for that. Most maps are pretty balanced, and it's almost always a 50-50 gunfight when you attack B head on. And that's not even taking into account the snipers and assault rifle users that'll be posted up somewhere, and they'll just pick you off instantly from a long ways away and you won't have a chance. So rather than attacking B head on right off the bat, I prefer to try and stay alive for the initial rush and gain map control for my team near the B flag before jumping on it. By doing this, you allow the initial wave of players to either kill each other off or damage each other quite a bit, and then you can just sweep in and pick up the scraps with very low risk. If the map allows for it, I almost always try to flank the enemies that rush B. So, for example, let's look at standoff. If I spawn at the A spawn, instead of rushing straight to the head glitch right behind B and getting picked off by a sniper, I'll try and rush the tractor side where the tank is, and I'll try and pick the enemies off from the side and from behind, the enemies that are rushing towards B, and they aren't watching their side. They're just looking for that first head-to-head gunfight right on the B flag. This sort of leads me to my next point with opening routes. You never want to go to the really popular spots, or very, very rarely. Sometimes there's a bit of a power position, but there's almost always an equal chance of you being taken out if you go to the really popular head glitch that overlooks the B flag. Try and be unpredictable with your opening routes. So now that we have opening routes covered, let's move on to the next topic, which is jumping on flags versus playing the objective. This may sound weird, but those don't always go hand in hand. You don't necessarily have to be capturing the flag to be playing the objective effectively, and sometimes when you're just jumping on the flag, you're not actually effectively playing the objective. A lot of self-proclaimed objective players will blindly throw themselves on the B flag all game trying to secure a win. These players may get the odd capture, but more often than not, they'll just feed the enemy easy points and score streaks. You rarely want to jump on a flag unless your team has proper map control. So if most of your team is either back at spawn or way off in some random spot of the map, you usually don't want to try to capture the B flag on your own. It's worth it to wait a few seconds for your teammates to get to you before jumping on the flag. This is where patience really comes in. It's often tempting to jump on the flag lone wolf and try to hold out on your own, but it really isn't the smart move. If you die here, and you usually will, now you're the one having to come all the way from spawn as your teammates approach the flag. So now your teammates are down one player as they try to jump on the flag, and you're way behind them coming towards them because you're coming off spawn, and this often turns into an endless cycle. I find that if you're waiting for teammates to push up, it's most effective to push past the flag and clear the defenders out before falling back to capture the flag, or you can just hold that buffer zone that you've cleared out past the flag so that your teammates can capture it completely uncontested. Of course, whenever possible, I also want those 200 capture points, so instead of just pushing past the flag or jumping on it myself, I'll just clear out the area surrounding the flag and then I'll wait for my teammates to support me before I touch the flag. The more players jumping on the flag at once, the better. So even if you have to wait that extra 10, 15, maybe even 20 seconds for your teammates to get to you, it'll be worth it rather than trying to cap it alone. Okay, so now that we have that covered, let's move on to what I consider to be the most important thing that separates a good player from a player that dominates. And that is how to read and manipulate spawns. If you can win gunfights consistently while guessing the general direction of the enemy, that's great, and you're probably a good player. But if you're able to know the exact location and when and where the enemy will be just by reading spawns, you'll be pretty much unstoppable. Now, I'm not going to go into extreme depth with this. That'll be for a different video on its own because I could talk about this for a long time, but I will give you a general indication of how it works in Domination. So this is how a normal map is laid out in Black Ops 2. Here are the typical spawn setups. The blue areas represent the main spawns, and the yellow areas represent the secondary spawns. Let's look at an example on Raid. As you can see, my really simple, basic spawn diagram lines up quite well here, and it actually works the same way with almost every map in Black Ops 2. So let's say your team holds C and B, and no one on your team is pushed past B. The enemy will spawn here at the A spawn almost every single time, unless there are score streaks up, but I'm not going to complicate things here. Now, if someone on your team pushes up to the point where they're close to or have a line of sight on that spawn, the enemy will now spawn either here at laundry or over here at the basketball courts, unless those spawns are also being occupied or watched by your team. If that happens, the enemy spawn will now either be forced to a secondary spawn or all the way back to your primary spawn. I want to quickly mention that you can also use this knowledge to locate enemies when you are the one spawning in. So for a quick gameplay example, once again on the map Raid here, I'm focusing on the B flag right now, trying to defend it, and right at this moment I see that a teammate has spawned behind me at the laundry area, so that means that there has to be enemies pushed up either into the kitchen or onto the pool side of the map. So I immediately turn and I find out that there are in fact a bunch of enemies pushed up into the kitchen area and pushing pool side here. And I did that without even seeing the enemy's dot on the minimap. I simply pushed there because I saw where my teammates spawned, so I was able to predict the enemy's movements based on my teammate's spawn. If you can master spawns in Domination and in other objective game modes, you'll be able to know the location of most of your enemies at all times without the need for a VSAT or a UAV. So now let's move on to the different situations you'll find yourself in while playing Domination. The first situation is when your team is comfortably holding a home flag as well as the B flag. This is the ideal situation in Domination. In this case, you are pretty much free to do whatever you want as long as you keep it in your head that you don't want to lose that B flag under any circumstance. So if you're a rusher that wants to get right in the action, don't be afraid to push into the enemy spawn a little bit, but remember the spawn thing and try not to push so far that you flip the enemy spawn all the way back to your spawn, unless you're really bored and feel confident in the win. If you're more of a defensive player in this situation, then you can lock down a choke point and try and build up a kill streak or something along those lines. So as we all know, you don't always get the ideal situation. So what do you do when the tables are turned and the enemy team holds the B flag as well as a home flag? It can be really tempting to panic and rush head on into that B flag, but you have to have a little bit of patience here. Like I explained earlier, push for map control surrounding the B flag, then move in for the capture. So you want to push the enemy back by making smart decisions and winning gunfights rather than sprinting in like a chicken with his head cut off, like a lot of people do. So you really want to take your time to think about where you want to push on the map and how you want to gain that map control. Now, even when you manage to stay calm and make those really smart pushes for map control, there are times when the enemy team is just set up too well on the B flag for you to get the capture. If you try the same thing over and over with no success, even if it's a smart move that usually would work, then try something new because you're becoming predictable to the enemy. Usually, I'll try making a couple pushes for map control around the B flag, and if those two or three tries don't work, I'll go for the flank. Flanking opens up a couple of different options to you. You can simply try to flank for the kills on those key players that are locking down the B flag, so your team can eventually move in and get the capture, or you can flank to try and capture the enemy's home flag and maybe even flip their spawn, which will just completely ruin their defensive setup on the B flag. Either way, you're going to be drawing attention towards you and away from the B flag, so it'll give your team a chance to make that push for the flag. Oftentimes when I flank, I'm also able to build up streaks, which can help a ton for capturing flags. So I might push around the flank, just focus on getting kills, work my way up to like a lightning strike or a VSAT, and then once I die and I spawn in again, I make that push again to the B flag, but this time I have support of my score streaks. Pretty much every team, especially in public matches, will have some sort of weakness to their setup. So in this situation, if something's not working, try something new. Try attacking from a different angle, try flanking. Just mix it up as much as possible and you'll eventually find their weakness and you'll be able to dominate them. Alright, so let's move on to the next situation you'll find yourself in Domination, and that's when your team is triple capping. That's when you own all three flags. This may sound great, but it's rarely ideal because the enemy spawn can flip to basically anywhere on the map, which is really hard to predict, and oftentimes you'll get what's called a split spawn. So half the enemy team may spawn near B, and the other half may spawn near A. This split spawn is very unpredictable, and a lot of the times it'll just end up getting you and your teammates killed because you'll have enemies attacking you from two different directions at once. A lot of the times, a triple cap for your team will result in a double or triple cap for the enemy team a very short time after that. So whenever I find myself triple capping the enemy team and I'm not playing in an organized party, I will let them take a home flag. I won't let them take the B flag, but if they start spawning near A and they start capturing A, even if I can get to that flag and kill them before they capture it, I'll typically just let them get the capture before I kill them. This way, their spawn is now set near that flag, and it's going to be much more predictable and controllable. Of course, if you're very confident that you're going to win the game and maybe you're just bored or something, you may want to push for that triple cap just to get some points and to get the action going a little bit faster. Okay, moving on to the final situation you'll find yourself in while playing Domination. This is when the enemy team has you triple capped, so you don't own any flags for your team. So even though I say it's not ideal to hold a triple cap yourself, it's definitely less ideal to be triple capped. Your team may get lucky with the spawns in this situation, and you may be able to instantly counter with a quick and easy double cap, but I wouldn't rely on this. When I spawn in this situation, my goal becomes to clear out an area surrounding a home flag, typically the one that I spawned closest to, and then I want to move in for the capture. Oftentimes when an organized team will triple cap you, they'll have 1 or 2 guys watching each flag, so don't rush to the nearest flag thinking it's safe just because you spawn near it. Have a look around, make sure it's safe before jumping on for the capture. And by clearing this area out first, you also anchor your team's spawn into that safe area, which will then concentrate your team's ability to capture flags. So it shouldn't be too tough to get that 1 flag capture at this point, because the enemy team will likely be spread pretty thin. So once you get that capture, you're now back to situation 2 and you can just follow the steps from there. So that pretty much covers all of the different situations you'll find yourself in Domination. But before we wrap up the video, I just want to go over a few little extra quick tips with Domination. So the first little tip I have is whenever you feel confident in a gunfight and you're near an enemy's flag, try to get into the capture area while you get the kill, because you'll get 200 points for that capture kill rather than 100 points for just a regular kill. So even if you don't intend on capturing that flag, just move yourself within the capture area, get the kill, and then you can back off if you want. And you can do this multiple times to build up a big score streak. This sort of brings me to my next little trick that you can do, which is bumping an enemy flag to draw the enemies to you. So to do this, you just enter the capture area very briefly and then back off to cover where you have a nice position to take out defenders. As we all know, when an enemy starts capturing one of your flags, the in-game announcer will say something like losing C or losing A or whatever flag it may be. So when you bump the flag, the enemies will hear that announcement and they'll often rush straight back to defend their flag. The average player coming back to defend his flag in this case will be looking for you within the capture area, so you can easily take them by surprise from your position of advantage that you just moved to. And you can do this often before they even realize what happened. Now if somebody tries this trick on you, it can be easily avoided. It may seem pretty obvious to a lot of you, but I know a lot of people don't know this, and it's very important to note that you can tell whether an enemy is capturing your flag by just looking at the icon above the flag. If it's flashing, there's an enemy on the flag, and if not, there isn't. So if somebody bumps your flag and then goes to a position of advantage to try and take you out and lure you in, if you just look at that icon and notice that nobody's capturing it, you'll know that that's either what that guy's doing, or maybe your teammates have taken him out already and you don't have to focus on that flag anymore. You can move on and keep doing what you were doing before the flag got bumped. So that's all I have for you guys for this episode of How to Dominate. Let me know in the comment section below which game mode you'd like to see me cover next. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.